President Biden met with Republican senators last week at the White House, raising hopes of a possible compromise on at least part of his infrastructure package. Earlier today, we sat down with Republican Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania and went through what is on the table and what is not.
We had a constructive meeting with the president on Thursday. There were 6 of us in the White House with the president, the vice president, and the secretaries of transportation and commerce. And what I was encouraged by is we were very candid with the president about what could possibly get Republican support, and he understood that. So, first of all, when we think about infrastructure, we're not talking about expanding the welfare state. That's a different category, different conversation. What we're talking about are the platforms and systems and things we use to move people and goods and services the way most people think of infrastructure. So roads, bridges, airports, waterways, the traditional infrastructure. So that's our list. Now, there's overlap with the president. It's just that his list extends well beyond that. If the president is willing to work with us where we agree, that's step number 1. That's very constructive. Step number 2 is we're not going to pay for this by undoing what we think was the most constructive tax reform in at least a generation. And, you know, after the 2017 tax reform went into effect, just before the pandemic hit, we literally had the best economy of my lifetime. Full employment, rising wages, narrowing income gap. I mean, more job openings than there were people looking for work. It was as good as it ever gets, and I'd like to get back to that. I don't think you get there by undoing the tax reform that helped us. So that's one. That's not on the table in our proposal. But I also don't want to just go out and borrow and print another $1 trillion or whatever the number ends up being. Our number's not that high. But the good news in that front is that there are hundreds of billions of dollars that have been approved in previous bills, emergency bills as they were described at the time. But the money doesn't get spent for years into the future. Why don't we repurpose that money for something that I think most Americans would think is very constructive, which is building out our infrastructure. So I think there's overlap. We'll have another iteration between Republican senators and the White House this week, and we'll see if we can make progress.
So let's